Confidence is a key ingredient to anything you do in life. As a racing driver, for instance, you should be confident in your vehicle, your ability to brake that much later than your opponent. As a boxer, you have to go into the match believing that you stand at least a good chance beating your opponent. That you're in that ring for a purpose, and which is to best the guy standing opposite of you. In esports, there are several instances where you can see players not playing to their normal level. And maybe it's because they've only played a year and happen to stomp or play average. But I don't mean that in that instance. That's a completely different circumstance because they're a newer player. Now, this includes international tournaments to where we can regularly see them perform at some degree to get a baseline of their ability in this setting. It doesn't make any sense to judge a rookie or someone who's barely been within the scene and then they get to the international stage and suddenly if they don't do well, oh yeah, they're a choker, or they just don't play confident at all. Now, League of Legends as a game is all about windows of timing. It's all about understanding, like can I make this play when his spell rotation is on cooldown? This Morgana just threw out her Q. That means that I have, a couple of seconds in order to make a play without getting CC'd. Or if I'm a jungler and I'm waiting in the bush, I'll have the bot lane instead bait out the Q, not get hit by it, and then go in as the jungler because they don't have any CC in order to stop me. Right? That's a window of timing. Maybe they're making a play topside and we have a small moment to transfer pressure over towards the bot side. So with that window of timing, you send your mid laner and your jungler down to the bottom lane and you do a tower dive. Or, they're pressing up in a lane and I can get a TP flank right now, but if they leave in 5 seconds, I can no longer make that play. That is not a valid play anymore. So it's all about understanding the windows of timing, but also being confident in knowing those windows of timing and being able to make the decision within that moment whether to pull the trigger or not. And confidence in itself can bring a person to pause in their beginning judgment, right? It's the whole condition of second guessing yourself. And you know how they say when you're taking an exam that you should never erase your answer and then put your second guess because it's most likely wrong. Well, that's where this comes in, except you have a harsher time limit. It's within seconds that you have to make a decision on whether to do something or not, because oftentimes you will not get the second chance in order to make that decision again. So it's all about understanding your windows of timing, because as you lose out on these opportunities, it keeps on stacking up. And if your opponent is willing to make this 70 or 60% chance play versus you not willing to do that, suddenly they get an advantage. And suddenly it's harder for you to then capitalize on other points of windows of timing, because now there are harsher requirements. They have more items, they have more experience, they have more gold in order to win out on that. So it becomes a snowballing problem, a scaling problem, that if you don't do confident plays within the beginning, then it's just going to stack up against you. Now, particular players at this current MSI 2018 that have shown a lack of confidence, I think obvious one is Ole from Team Liquid. Now, Ole showed signs in lacking confidence, both from Team Liquid saying that he was lacking confidence, and so they subbed in Joey, their sub support, to get some playtime. But you could even see his lack of confidence within his laning phase in the beginnings of the tournament. It just looked really off. Bot lane didn't look good at all, and therefore Doublelift couldn't really do anything because your support is the person that leads the lane, and you're kind of attached to the hip with that person, at least for the beginning parts of the game. So subs also add extra pressure to the starter, which I don't think anyone has realized or talked about with Ole's situation, which can either be a good thing or a bad thing depending on the personality type of the starter or even the sub, right? So if you're someone who likes the pressure, is willing to be able to teach this person along with proving that you're better than that person will ever be, that's good pressure. It keeps you on your toes and it keeps you performing at the highest level that you possibly can. Now, there's the bad thing, which might be in Ole's case, which you feel that pressure of the sub coming for your starter position, and that goes along with job security. And so you're worried about this person taking your job the entire time, and that's in the back of your mind while you're playing these matches. And if you perform badly, that you'll be subbed out, or you'll at worst be replaced entirely for maybe the next season. So Ole did not look good during this MSI tournament, especially during the beginning, and I think he deserves that criticism. But I think it's also a problem of confidence, and it's stemming from confidence, because we know, as him performing within the NALCS at least, he's been a pretty good support player. And even internationally, he's been a decent support player as well too with Immortals. Now, I want to move on to the other idea of getting international experience, because you can't say someone has choked until you've seen them in that environment multiple times. I think people's terminology with choked versus mental boom or lacking confidence, I think those are completely different terms when you separate, confidence and mental boom, along with this terminology of choked. I think choked is a way harsher term, because it signifies that they had expectations to perform at a high level, but they didn't. But why would you have those expectations if the environment has then changed? So obviously I'm talking about Khan, and how people have said that he's choked. He was supposed to be one of the best top laners within this entire tournament, coming from the LCK2, and also being quite cocky as well. And so when you're talking about Khan, he's been to 2 international tournaments. I wouldn't necessarily consider that choking, as the sample size is far too small, and that's also in part to blame for Riot, because we just don't have that many international tournaments to begin with. But to say that this player has choked is incorrect. It's because he has lacked experience on the international stage. It's completely different. It's a different meta, as the meta also develops during the tournament itself. So it's entirely different from LCK. It's entirely different from the regular split season. So to say that someone has choked in that environment, I think is unjust. And maybe you should say that instead he lacked confidence, or he just had a mental boom, right? And so with this said, I think confidence is very key in a player performing to the highest level possible, because they will take advantage of, well, their advantages, right? They know exactly how they are scaling within the game. They know their gold lead. They know what to look for with the cooldowns or the map rotations around, their own team and the enemy team. And so with that, you can confidently make your own decisions based upon what's going around upon the map. And so with these players, it seems like they have lacked confidence, which then affects their play in a negative manner, and so therefore they just appear very bad. So confidence is important, both in all walks of life, but also with esports players and how they play the game and how they perform. And so when you judge a player based on their performance, you should judge on their lack of confidence, or their boast of confidence to begin with. Faker plays as a very confident player, regardless of whether he is within the regular season or if he's in an international tournament. Uzi this tournament played extremely confidently. He knew his limits of his champion and the limits of himself, and he didn't necessarily exceed those limits. He played within his bounds and was very smart about his play in the entirety of the tournament. So, confidence is important, and it's important to know exactly how you should judge a player and if they lack confidence or if they are actually choking because they're expected to perform at an international tournament and they have had experience in that type of setting.